So in a civilized society, Tom Moss would go to the police, and the police would defend him. But is that an option for Tom Moss?
No.
No, he can't go to the police. So he and his employees start sleeping in the store with their rifles. And ultimately, the white grocers come to destroy the store. There's a shootout, and the white people run away when Tom Moss and the others shoot at them. And who do they run to? To the police. And the police then come and arrest Tom Moss. They arrest the guy who just got his store attacked for what?
Protecting the store.
Right. And of course, that's not the crime they list. The crime they list is attempted murder. At this point then, Moss and those two other black men are in the Memphis jail. They are in the custody of the state. And the Constitution guarantees them a trial. But a mob gathers outside the jail. And the Memphis police opened the jail and gave the three black men to the mob. Now it's important to note there the collusion between the mob and the police, right? The police hand over the prisoners to the mob. And the mob then publicly lynched them. Tom Moss's last words were, "Tell my people to go west. There is no future for them here." Wells knew that the lynching of Tom Moss had nothing to do with white women. What was it all about?
They were upset that they weren't shopping at the white people's store.
Right. It's all really about economics. Right? It's about a black-owned business taking money from a white man, the way the white man sees it. And so Wells wrote an editorial in the black newspaper. And she called the white men who did the lynching savages and barbarians. And so in the white Memphis newspaper, they promised that if they ever saw Wells in Memphis again, they would lynch her too. And again, is this like some shadowy threat? Where is it?
In the newspaper.
It's in the newspaper. Right, you can't get more public than that. Wells got the hell out. She went to Chicago. And from Chicago, she started doing research. She started researching lynchings because she suspected from her own experience with her friend that maybe other lynchings didn't have anything to do with white women either. So her method was to go back and read the white newspapers that recounted in gruesome detail the lynchings that occurred. By using white newspapers, what criticism is she trying to mute?
From the black people? Just the criticism of like what they did to themselves because they wrote it?
That's right. She's trying to mute criticism from white people who might say, well, you're making this up. But she can say, no, I'm using the sources you wrote down. So she goes back and looks at specific lynchings and reads the newspaper accounts about those lynchings. So all this account you see here, this is from Ida B. Wells's work. So she has cataloged, state by state, the lynchings, year by year. And she went through and created tables and studied the causes. And remember, whose sources is she using? White people's. And she showed, when she published Southern Horrors, that actually very few lynchings had anything to do with white women. very few of the lynchings had anything to do with white women. Instead, what she showed was that most lynchings were about the same thing as Tom Moss's. They were about economic competition. Not all lynchings, but the greatest number of lynchings were about economic competition. Yeah.
Were white people ever lynched?
So occasionally. More than 90% of lynchings happened in the South, and in the South, almost 100% of the lynchings were black people. But 10% of lynchings happened outside the South, and overall, about 8% of the people lynched were not black. So occasionally, you know. Usually, the white people who were lynched were considered of questionable whiteness. So Italians were actually the second most lynched group in America, followed by Jews at third most lynched, both of dubious whiteness to other white people. So part of what Wells was trying to do was to show Northerners the horror of lynching. That's why she calls it Southern horrors. And to do that, Wells tried to circulate the photographs that white people took of their own victims. These were photographs that murderers took of their own victims and then circulated them like trophies. This guy was lynched right outside the courthouse where he had been on trial.